Hello, welcome to Nursery, a podcast from Ohio's Creative Voice, sponsored by the vegan and gluten-free dessert company, The Orange Avocado. If you're interested in some of the music on this podcast by Third Class, go to thirdclass.net. And if you like our sense of humor, you just may enjoy Bullskit Productions, found at bullskit.com. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Let's get to it.
It's cold in this neck of Pennsylvania tonight. With the airplanes in flight, they plummet at my car. And it's cold and I talk and I strain you to fight about pain at its height and whatever you are. And it's cold in this camp in Kentucky tonight. And the river's a sight as you sit on a branch. And we've rolled up our sleeves and are lucky to fight about pain at its height, and we're taking a chance.
I've loved Third Class since the first time I've heard them. I think what makes them so relatable is the fact that they suffer from eternal Peter Pan syndrome of, hearkening back to childhood, which probably comes from, Jack and Lee being brothers and, them all talking about things from their childhood, like Chloe the cat. Chloe's epitaph is Chloe and burying her, and things like, childhood, like staring at the ceiling and from them growing up, where they did. And it's, everyone can relate to things talking about childhood and growing up and, kind of being reluctant to grow up, as like Lee and his wife both have grown up, jobs and, but we can still, relate to, childhood traumas and fears and things like that. What I've always had in part of the Youngstown scene is that even though I don't play any music and I really am not good at playing any instruments or anything like that, I'm kind of an archivist or archivalist. I don't know how you would pronounce it, just by being a journalist and trying to document everything that goes on and all of the, wonderful times and all of the great talents that come through town by, saving flyers and taking pictures and videos of everything. And me and, other people like Gary Angelo, who is a, gigantic music, nut and has an encyclopedic memory and can, remember every single minutia of everything that's ever happened, way better than me because I have a horrible memory. And that's probably why I keep so much stuff. I could not move to Texas without my, boxes and boxes of old flyers and tickets and photos and stickers and everything. But, that's kind of why I'm a journalist, is that I can, participate in the music scene without having to have, any actual talent. And what I love about Third Class is that when you go to the show, it's like being in a room full of all your best friends, even if you don't know anybody, because you can sing and dance together and just have a really good time, because it brings out the kid in you seeing them, and I remember one time at Cedars, I have this on video, they were playing Drug Inside Your Wrist Part 2, and there's this part that's kind of like almost a waltz. It's like 3/4 time, and everyone was just kind of dancing with one another and waltzing around the room at the end, and it was just like just a beautiful moment. And that's kind of the best part about seeing Third Class and loving them is, just the camaraderie between everybody and how they bring people together. Let's see, what else? I've noticed in this podcast that Lee likes to ask people about their religious views, and I don't know if I have any, because I'm kind of a heathen. I don't know if anyone's noticed, and I'm kind of a godless heathen. But I noticed that Mike Mammon, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, from Mutts, a frequent visitor to the O. They're playing at Paps, or at the Oaks soon. Not at Papsally, I don't know, but they will be at the Oaks soon. They're from Chicago. They're amazing, wonderful band. But Mike told the story on Facebook about an egg, about how everybody is all one person waiting to be born inside of an egg, and the whole universe is an egg, and how you are everyone that ever was, and once you are finished living everybody's life, you will finally be born out of the universe into whatever lies beyond. And I can have more faith in that than anything I've ever heard on this planet. So, anything is possible, and, I don't know, it just kind of, melts my brain, and, I guess I can believe in that. But, let's see if I have anything else to say. I just can't stop being inspired by third class, either by just how great and wonderful and nice they are in the scene, anybody you'd ever want to play with, they're like your dream band, they're just so, smart about how shows work and how to treat other bands and just about booking and things like that. I couldn't imagine a better group of guys to work with to put on a show or a festival or an art thing or anything. They're just too cool. And I remember a lyric from them that resonates with me is they had a song that says leather Bibles hit me on the back of my head.
Leather Bibles hit me in the back of my head, and I topple in endless canyons. I'm dreaming, I think I'm dreaming, and I won't remember all my friends when I get older. Towards the end, let's duck away and run and hide behind the dumpster where you cry, and we'll get older. Everyone will see us drop dead one by one. The neighborhood will disregard the presence of the wild.
That reminds me of when I was in high school. I was a goth, and I remember I was on the first floor, and somebody dropped a Bible from 2 floors up down the stairwell, and it hit me on the head, because I was evil and, a devil worshiper and whatever. So whenever I heard that song, it kind of reminded me of my childhood, which is what their whole, their class's whole thing is, which kind of, cemented my whole, love of them. So I guess that's it for my recording. I don't know what else to say.
Jeremy, you excited the Ellen's home? You excited? Say something to the microphone.
Hold still, you little peanut. Come on. Let's go outside. Let's go outside. Are you excited? So excited you're here.
Jeremy's excited. Guys, what you heard before was Sarah Lorraine. Sarah, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. It was cool to hear about you in school as a youngster. Coming up, you're going to hear from my friend Brittany Burns from Michigan, now in Portland, Oregon. She's going to talk to you about a ghost story. Then you're going to hear about my weird friend Animal Powder and a story about chewing gum. Then my friend Megan Wormz has a story about ex-lovers. She's a folk singer, and I'm going to play you something from her album Little Birdie. She's from Athens, Ohio. But right now I have something from my friend Jacob Graham, a former Columbiana County resident who is in a band called The Drums, a band called Horseshoes, and he also has an album out on Plastic Music called Towards a Quaker View of Synthesizers, Cascading Slopes. I'm going to play you some of that after you hear his story. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jacob Graham.
Hello, Lee. This is Jacob Graham, a former Ohioan, or, well, I guess you're sort of always an Ohioan if you grew up there. But thanks for asking me to do this. I do enjoy your podcast very much. I recently listened to the episodes with the one with Pepe and the one where you interviewed your mother, and I really enjoyed them a lot. And it's interesting you're asking me to do this because I just recently was sort of thinking about how I wanted to sort of record myself talking to be able to listen to it in the future. And I guess that was sort of brought on by a few things. One of them was I recently transferred an old cassette tape of my grandfather, who is deceased, to, from analog to digital, so we could preserve that audio. But I just kind of thought it would be nice to just record myself kind of talking and kind of directionless, just so when I'm old or when I'm gone, people could listen to it and know what I sound like. I do a lot of interviews with my band, but I always kind of feel like, I don't know, you're kind of talking about whatever the interviewer wants to talk about. It's rarely things that I care very much about. Or maybe I've just talked about them so many times that they don't seem very interesting to me anymore. So I guess that was kind of a build-up and not so much about what I was thinking about talking about. So if you want to cut that part off, you can. But if you want to keep it, you can keep it too. So I guess I just sort of wanted to talk about time a little bit. I feel like I've always been very conscious of time and how quickly it moves and how it affects us. And I've been thinking about it even more lately than usual. Probably because recently I was involved in a conversation about death with the people at my church, which is it's a Quaker meeting in New York City, the 15th Street Quaker meeting. So, and that gets you thinking a lot about how much time you have and that sort of thing. And this isn't really like a real story per se, so if you want more of a story, let me know. But this is just kind of, I guess, ramblings of what I've been thinking about lately. So anyway, something else occurred to me recently, which was someone asked me what I remembered about the 1980s. I was born at the end of 1983, so I guess I was alive in the 1980s for about 6 years. But when they asked me that, it got me thinking, like, what do I remember about the 1980s? And to be honest, I don't feel like I ever really lived in the 80s so much, at least not like what people normally think of, what the sort of images that come to mind when people imagine the 1980s, because growing up in Northeast Ohio, there's not a lot of trends like that are on the cutting edge happening. I don't know. I feel like when I was a kid in the 80s, I was actually living more in a second-hand version of the 60s and the 70s. I was only wearing second-hand clothing from, second-hand clothing stores, because that's all my family could afford, and I was watching a lot of like Sesame Street, which I don't know if you know this, but kind of the way that Sesame Street was working back then is they would have so many, they would kind of compile the shows almost, so they'd have some current things happening, but then they'd cut to something that might have been 20 years old or something like that. And then, of course, like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which I don't know if you could even put a sort of specific time stamp on that, because when it was still going in the 90s, it looked like the 60s or something. So I don't know. So when I was growing up in the 80s, it did not feel like the 80s. It felt like something else. It felt like what I like to think of as, well, I like to think that in a way, Ohio is sort of like frozen in the mid-70s, like architecturally or something. It seems like the economy maybe must have, and I don't know a lot about the economy in Ohio exactly. I know at some point like the steel and rubber industries must have had like some sort of decline or something, but I don't know when that happened. But to me it always seemed like Ohio was sort of frozen in the 70s or something, and it sort of felt like, I don't know if I just kind of like growing up without cable television and watching a lot of PBS, it just felt like my childhood and PBS and Ohio were sort of like one thing that I can't really separate in my mind, and I think that's a good thing. I don't know if I think that just because I am that, and people are sort of naturally, I don't know, selfish and drawn to themselves in some way. So I don't know, and since then, I think a lot about time travel, and some of my favorite artists are time travelers, specifically David McDermott and Peter McGow, who were living in New York City in the 80s, but were living as if it were more like the 1880s, and you know, like, I don't know, driving around the city in a horse and carriage that they owned, or like a Ford Model T car or something. And they were artists, so they had made a bunch of money, but they spent it all kind of on what they called their time machine, which was their lives. And I don't think I set out to do that, but I think I have in some way, that I don't like a lot of things that were made after the 1970s. I don't like, I definitely don't like them aesthetically. But, you know, I don't know if you remember this, Lee, but when we were kids, I was very into old analog synthesizers from the 70s and earlier, and I still am. But back then we were all kind of had our bands and things like that, and I'd put on concerts in the basement of my grandparents' church, and we all had a nice time. I don't know, those were kind of strange times. I think that was it. I'm deviating from the plot here a little and reminiscing, I guess. But yeah, I grew up with this fascination with old synthesizers, electronic music synthesizers, and even now I'm in my apartment in New York, and I have a tiny little studio. Well, I guess you could call it a studio. It's actually kind of just a large closet that I've made into my studio. I don't know, it's probably about 5 feet by 4 feet or something like that, but it's full of old synthesizers and things, and in a way it's kind of my time machine. I come in here and it can't be later than 1978 in here, because pretty much everything in this room is from before then, and I don't know why it's that point in time that I romanticize so much. I wonder if it's maybe because it's before I was born, so it's kind of just before I was born, so I don't know, it's like all this stuff that you could never like really experience. You know, you were never there, so it's very easy to romanticize that sort of thing, and what's the present and in front of you is very easy to be negative about, I guess. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, let me see how much time I've been talking here. Whoa, it looks like about 11 minutes. Well, I don't know if I really have much else to say. But thank you for asking me to do this. And I can't wait to be a guest on your show in person next time I'm in Ohio. I'm really looking forward to that. Then we would be having more of a discussion, and this is more like writing a letter or something like that. Which I guess I can also say, as one last little piece of this story, you know how people always are saying, like, oh, I miss writing letters and sending them in the mail to my friends, and I miss receiving letters, and everything's electronic these days, and that kind of thing. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I miss that too. I'm sure everyone misses that. Everything's less tangible than it used to be. But I recently discovered that Scotch tape, you know, the company Scotch Tape that makes tape that you stick things together with, but they also used to make magnetic tape, you know, like audio recording tape, and I don't imagine they still do, but they used to, and they used to sell these reels of tape that were in like a little plastic container. I guess this was even sort of before like cassette tapes. This was just like, you know, like the 2 reels of tape. And it was in this plastic kind of weatherproof container, and it was called, I think, like an electronic letter or like an audio letter or something like that. And the whole purpose of it was that people could record themselves talking and then send it to their send it to their loved ones in the mail, and it would just be like a letter, but they could listen to it. And I thought that was such a great idea. Even the packaging of it had like, it was printed as if it were like a postcard. There was a place for the postage and the addresses and everything like that. And yeah. So in a way, this sort of strange exercise we're doing right now is like that, which I think is kind of nice. So I guess that's all for now. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
like to tell you a story. So I spent some time thinking about a story to tell, a really great story. And then last night I woke up from a nightmare and it reminded me of a story that you might enjoy. So basically this is the most scared I've ever been. So it all starts with me trying to figure out a really great Halloween lesson for my students. I wanted something that would take the stigma off of scary ghosts, vampires, and monsters. Because kids can get scared about those things, and I didn't want to scare kids more. I wanted to make them less scared. So I spent hours looking one night for a story or a poem or something to read to my students. And I ended up giving up and opting for more sleep. So that night, I had a really crazy nightmare. It was really, really vivid, and it's one I had many times before. It's a reoccurring nightmare that I've had since I was 5 years old, and so I'm going to tell you about it. Even though nightmares are never scary to other people. And sometimes they're a little ridiculous to repeat because they make you feel a little silly. But I'm going to try and tell you this story. Okay, so I'm 5 years old and I'm working in this mad scientist lab. And it kind of resembles Dr. Frankenstein's. The walls are made of brick and mortar, and there's low-hanging light bulbs, but there's no shades on these dangling light bulbs. And when you look out the window, it's actually really beautiful. It's a mountain scene when the sun is beginning to set, and the sky looks like a watercolor painting. But that's pretty much where the beauty of the dream ends. Suddenly, a faceless man comes and tells me it's time, and pulls a lever. So I'm at this point, either in Jurassic Park or the Mesozoic era. It's hard to say. So there's palm trees, or what look like palm trees, and high grasses, and there's tiny little cute dinosaurs everywhere. And then in no time, the ground begins to shake, and small dinos start fleeing. So you can probably see where this is going. I turn around, and a huge T-Rex is making eye contact with me. I start to run, but there's really no use. So then I suddenly hide under a log because it's the only thing I can find. And then I see, I guess, like a panned out shot. So I see myself hiding under this log. And then I see a T-Rex standing over me. And that's when I wake up every time. So I jolt awake. And at this point, I'm really confused as to where I am. Always am. So am I at the Faceless Man's wannabe Frankenstein lab? Am I in the dinosaur's stomach? Am I somewhere else in the time spectrum? And then, alas, I realize I'm in my own room. But I don't recover right away. I'm still freaked out, and I'm still searching my room for signs of anything creepy. And that's when I see him. The Faceless Man is standing in the corner of my room. And I experience a fear that I've never felt before, and I've never felt since. So I'm instantly paralyzed. I couldn't fly or fight, which is really frustrating because I feel like people always say when you're scared, you have the flight or fight response, and I had neither of those. I was just paralyzed in fear. So an eternity passes, well, it feels like an eternity anyways, and I'm staring at the Faceless Man. And then I recognize something, and it's his coat, and it looks a lot like my coat. And then I realize that he looks a lot skinnier than I remember him being in my dream. And I instantly let out this breath that I've been holding for an eternity. And when I realize that the Faceless Man is just my coat hanging on my lamp, I feel so silly. I really don't even know I put my coat on the lamp. Who does that? Obviously, even if I would have woken up at noon the next day, I would have thought that was a human being standing in my corner. So anyways, I fall back asleep and I spend the rest of my night sleeping mostly peacefully. And when I wake up the next day, the dream is still fresh in my mind. And I start looking for a Halloween story. And this time I'm even more desperate to find a story that kind of eliminates those stigmas and that fear, because I was so scared the night before. And I couldn't find anything still. And since then, a lot of stories, not a lot, but I've come to find a lot of stories that are books that kids can read that aren't as scary, but there's also some that are really scary. But at the time, couldn't find anything, and I don't know if I wasn't looking well or what was going on. But I ended up writing this poem, and it's titled The Ghost Poem. Ghosts are not scary. I actually find them quite merry. In fact, it's my dream to see a ghoul not trapped in a dream. I'd climb all the mountains, I'd swim all the seas, I'd jump over branches, I'd glide through a stream. One day, I'm sure I did see it, and fear hit me. I could not run. The ghost was so thin, his coat did not fit. Just a coat on a lamp. Oh, what fun. The ordeal left me with only one conclusion. Ghosts can be scary, even if they're just an illusion. So that's my story of the scariest I've ever been, and a nice little poem to cheer you up afterwards. Thank you.
In 2007, I went to a place called Dutch Village Inn in Columbiana with my band Third Class. We played with a band called The Zoo and a band called Devonshire. And we also played with a band from the South Range School's Greenford, North Lima area called No Clue. That band has since gone and spread out across various places, nooks and crannies, I imagine. But one or two of the folks from that outfit, if not more, are associated with something called Aztec Media nowadays. I just wanted to give them a shout out in sticking with the theme of Ohio locality. They, for what I know, they focus on the visual arts, and once in a while I'll see a photo from one of our shows pop up on Instagram or some other social media site, and it's really interesting. Like, they'll just come and take some photos of musicians, and they're kind of shopping themselves around these days as like a visual promo, like maybe do some album art, maybe do some flyers, probably lots of things, video probably, and I've seen them do like a little video montage of us at a show, and just cool things that they kind of do as samples. So check out Aztec Media, Aztek Media, and I believe their email, at least one of their emails, is Aztec and then the letter X, media@gmail. So check those guys out. They are really cool guys. Hi guys, if you're listening, and thank you for the free press. I appreciate it. Speaking of press, and a kind of old-fashioned, not super old-fashioned, but old-fashioned enough that I can call it that, thing are zines. Zines. Coming out of the punk era, I suppose, are these black and white, oftentimes, little pamphlets that often might, if they're not directly stating it, might suggest like an anarchist point of view, liberal points of view to say the least, or maybe straight up just art. However you want to look at it. I want to shout out two of them, people that I've interacted with personally. One is Park Garfield Press. I ordered for like $1.50. That was shipping included in that. Or I ordered a very small copy of something called Time Code from Park Garfield Press, based out of East Palestine. Shout out to Park Garfield Press. Very simple, fun, cool, interesting, poetic little zine. Very tiny little zine. Maybe some more stuff will be coming from that particular zine company or whatever you want to call it. Then also, this one's kind of defunct now, but you can probably find it around Columbus, and we might just take them and pass them out at our shows. I'm going to keep some for myself, but something called the Black Cloud. This is a buddy from East Palestine as well. Both East Palestine people. This is amazing. That's a very small town on the Ohio-PA border, northeast Ohio. So the Black Cloud, there's all these different issues it was based out of Columbus, though, but the guy's from East Palestine. I just got to, shout out to all three of those different outfits, because they're just making a very small but awesome difference in Ohio, just keeping stuff alive, keeping music, visual art, poetry, prose, news, just writing, or visual stuff alive. So check out Aztec Media, Park Garfield Press, and maybe if you're in Columbus, you may have heard of the Black Cloud.
Walking kid, I don't know what I did. Seal green ropes down the road. Keep walking, kid. Keep dreaming, son. When the day is done, bust around, stepping out. Keep dreaming, son. Pull me off the stairs in my underwear. Set me right and save my life. Please don't forget about me. Please don't forget about me.
Hi everybody, welcome to Nursery, a podcast from Ohio's Creative Voice. My name's Animal Powder, and I'm going to take over the show today. I'm hijacking it. I've got a story to tell you about. It's going to blow your socks right off your face. Tell you that much right now. I'll tell you a little bit more right now. When I tell you the story's going to blow the socks off your face. You wear socks on your face? You wear socks on your face. I wear socks on my face. Everybody wears socks on their face. Everybody knows it's a fact. Again, very normal. I know it's normal. You don't have to tell me. I know you didn't. I know I'm the only one talking, and you can't possibly tell me. But Lee told me to tell you, if you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, to please look up the podcast on thirdclass.net or bullskit.com. Nursery is on iTunes. It is on SoundCloud. It is on Stitcher Radio. It is on Facebook, Twitter, archive.org, and more importantly, as previously mentioned, thirdclass.net and bullskit.com. Go on there. You'll find an email address. You can email Lee and say, hey, I want to give you $1 million for Nursery. You do an okay job. I'd give you $70 million if I really thought you were impressing me, but you're all right. I'll give you $1 million. Then you can go travel around, do the podcast all hyped up, pay for the pro plan on SoundCloud, get a nicer mic. You can go on tour with Third Class, and you can fulfill all your dreams creatively to entertain other people. You know, that sort of thing. Anyways, back to the story. So one day, I'm hanging out at homeroom when I was a young kid in high school. My friend, let's call him Animal Powder, he had the same name as me. So, he's sitting there, and he's slowly starting to nod off and fall asleep, right in the middle of homeroom. They're having announcements, talking about what's for lunch, sloppy joes and celery. If I do say so myself, I do remember things like that. Photographic memory, even though that was coming over a PA announcement, and that's an auditory memory. So, anyhow, I don't know why I would say I have photographic memory. No, I do. I know why now. I had a photographic memory because I later saw the lunch in the cafeteria, so just got my wires crossed, but still valid memory. I know you're impressed by my memory now, so, you're welcome. I realize that I've done you a service by being impressive in the department of remembering cool stuff. Otherwise, my friend with the same name as me, he's sitting there at home. Okay, you know what? I know it wasn't me, okay? That wasn't me. Let's think of a better name for him. Let's see. What's a good name for him? You know what? Let's call him Cherry Garcia, like the little Ben & Jerry ice cream flavor. Cherry. We'll call him Cherry. My friend Cherry, sitting in homeroom, laying there on the desk, his head's down. The announcement's wrong. Celery. Sausages. That's what's going to be for lunch, kids. And so on and so forth. Let's go back with that. I think this is a pep rally. This is going to be awesome. Say about myself. I said to Chair Garcia. That's the same. And it's just, over a minute. I said, what are you trying to sleep at? I'm trying to sleep out of my pad. I said, I'm sorry, Jerry. You're trying to sleep. I don't know if this is we got that done, but they're not. Everyone's doing his head back. Let's head back down the desk. Right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's laying his head down on the desk. The whole time I noticed that I'd been chewing gum. You know why I noticed that I'd been chewing gum? Because it was me chewing the gum. Golly, people, keep up with me. Anyways, it was a watermelon flavored gum. I was chewing it. Probably bubble yum or bubblicious. Those are good gums. I was sitting there chewing the gum. When I turned over, I said something to Cherry. I got Cherry. And I had to see Cherry Garcia. The gum pops out of my mouth. I open my mouth to say Cherry. I shoot out the C-H on his name. I shoot it out. My gum flies out of my mouth. And where the H-E-double-L do you think it goes? It lands in Cherry's mouth, of all places. He's laying there, his head's down to the side. He's facing me. His mouth's open a little, he's drooling because he's sleeping. The gum lands in his mouth pretty hard, goes to the back of his throat, and it wakes him up with a start. He shoots up, kind of clambers out of his desk, stands up, and starts kind of jumping up and down. You can't really hear what he's saying, though. I can't stand when you can't hear what people are saying. His teacher says, Cherry, what's the big idea, Cherry? What's the big idea? A chair's all like, the teacher's like, I can't hear you, Cherry. I can't hear you. And it annoys me really badly when I can't tell him. And Cherry looks at her and says, there's something stuck in my mouth. The teacher's not quite getting it. I can tell what he's saying. I can tell he's saying something stuck in his mouth. The teacher's not just not getting it. The teacher's like, cherry, mulberry, banana, fairy. Just calm yourself. I'm trying to tell me like a human being what's going on with you right now, Cherry. The cherry's just turning red, man. He's turning red, he's turning blue, purple, pink, just all kinds of different colors, man. I thought it was from the gum at first. I was chewing a watermelon gum there. It's like a pink gum. I thought maybe the gum turned my color or something. I didn't think the whole way through, like, hey, if I was chewing the gum myself, why wouldn't it turn my color, me a color of the gum before it turned him to color? Especially since I had the chewing part of it more, and he just had it, the lodge in his throat end was all on him, I took care of the chewing. He took care of the choking to death. But he did die right then and there in the middle of the classroom. It was a really unfortunate thing.
Hi Lee. Hi everyone else. This is Megan Wormz Bihn down in Athens, Ohio. And I'm currently walking along the bike path down here in Athens. We have a lovely bike path that follows the Hocking River. It's one of my favorite places to walk, and I live just like a block away from it. I promised Lee I would tell him a story. So I'm going to send him one about one of my exes. Actually, is my first real ex-boyfriend. My first boyfriend, my first love, my first real quote-unquote relationship. It was when I was in college. We were both in college, and we fell in love and rushed into things and shared an apartment for a while, and we were together a little over a year. And eventually, as things do, it faded out, and we broke up. But it was a hard breakup. It was really hard. There were a lot of hurt feelings. There were some mean things that were said. And eventually, we just had to really cut off and not even try to be friends because it was so hard. We were young. We don't know how these things work. So we had really cut off and moved on and done our own things. But, in the years that followed, we would see each other at parties or potlucks or social gatherings because we still had a lot of the same friends. And we still do have a lot of the same friends. And when we see each other at these gatherings, we're always very polite and kind to each other. But, it never really felt comfortable. We never really were buddies or close again. So, 10 years later, our friends get married. Some of our really close friends. So close that he's the best man in the wedding, and I'm the preacher. Because I'm ordained in the state of Ohio. So if you need to get hitched, just let me know. So he was the best man, and I was the preacher for our friends who were getting married. And we got to spend a lot of time together because we were both in the ceremony. And the whole wedding was like a 4-day party in the woods. Our friends had rented 2 lodges out in the Hocking Hills. And they had this 4-day party with a little 5-minute ceremony in the middle. That was their wedding. It was great, which I think is a great way to have a wedding because if the point is to bring all your family and friends together and introduce them, what a better way than to really relax and spend time, play some music, have a few drinks together, and share some food together, which was also great because, it wasn't a catered event. You didn't have to sit around waiting for some table to get called to get your food. There were no assigned seats. There was just a kitchen full of food, and everybody brought a dish, and if you wanted to eat, you just ate. And if you didn't like what was there, you went in the refrigerator and made something else. And it was the best wedding. It was really nice. It was in a beautiful place, lots of great people, really fun. And the night after the ceremony that night, there was Chinese lanterns that the couple wanted to light and send off into the air. These things, they're like these lanterns made out of paper, and you light this kind of fuel, and they fill up and they float off majestically into the sky. It's really actually beautiful. Well, I don't really know how I feel about these lanterns. I don't know what kind of fuel they use. I don't really know what happens to them after they float majestically into the sky, where they go, but I have found some in trees while I'm hiking or tangled up somewhere. So I know they're not all just disintegrating. So I was kind of having mixed feelings about these lanterns, and I was standing next to my ex when everybody was migrating outdoors to light these lanterns, and I just thought out loud and expressed my feelings and said, man, those lanterns are just going to pollute everywhere. They're probably going to get stuck in the trees, and who knows what that fuel is made out of. And my ex turned to me and he said, come on, like, think of the positive. Let's support our friends who are getting married that want to do this. This is a great way for everyone to come together and celebrate their wedding, and it's what they want to do, and we're here to support them. And it was so odd because most of our relationship, when we were together, I was the one pointing out the positive things. He was really into conspiracy theories and pointing out all the injustices in the world. And I was like, come on, like, there's so many positive things going on, and let's think of the positive, bright side of things. So him calling me out on being negative was really a shocker at that moment. Well, everybody filed outside, and it's out under this beautiful starry sky, and people are getting their lanterns and starting to light them, and I happened to find my ex in the crowd, and I said, you know what, thanks for calling me out. I should be more positive. I want to support our friends, and you know, actually we're in a giant clearing up here. They're not going to get stuck in the trees, and it'll be fine. And he said, you want to share this lantern? Because there weren't enough to go around for everybody that was there. So I said, sure. And there we were, holding this lantern. And we're lighting it. It takes a little while to really light and fill up with air, and you have to just stand there and hold it until it starts rising on its own. So in this moment where we're standing, waiting for this lantern to fill up, we're kind of talking. He's like, so how's life? Are you happy? Are you really happy? And I'm like, yeah, it's the best. I get to play music for people. I get to travel. Sometimes it's hard, but I'm so thankful, and it suits me. And I was like, how's your life? He's like, yeah, it's great. I got this great little house. I got good work. I have good friends. Things are really good. I'm really happy. It's like, man, I'm so happy you're happy. And he's like, I'm happy for you too. And it was like kind of this closure after 10 years of awkward politeness. It's like, yeah, things didn't work, but I'm happy that you're happy. And all these lanterns just started floating up into the air majestically. It's like 40 lanterns, and ours was joining the ranks. It started to lift off. All these little glowing jellyfish-like creatures illuminating this starry sky, floating up together, going off like so far you could only see some of them, a tiny bit. And then our lantern rose about 20 feet off the ground with this group, then all of a sudden took a hard turn to the right out of nowhere and careened into the only tree in the whole clearing. And while 39 lanterns rose majestically into the night sky, ours became densely entangled in the branches of a tree and burned there. I thought it was perfect. I don't know what he thought at the time. I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was just so perfect. We just shared this nice moment, and then our lantern crashed and burned into a tree while everyone else's majestically floated off in the air. And I don't even know if people in the group know whose lantern it was that got caught in the trees, but if you're listening, it was our lantern that got tangled up in those branches. And I think somebody had to go get down the remnants of it in the morning after the party. So that's my story. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks, Lee. I'll see you around.
Lonely days, lonely nights, I can still feel alright, 'cause I know you can hear these words on the wind. If I sing, if I speak, it will carry the miles between your heart and mine. There are words on the wind. When the wind blows your hair and your mind far away, you could hear my words on a cool breezy day. Close your eyes, let go. Open your soul. Hear my songs of free love. These are words on the wind. La-di-da, la-di-da. La-di-dee, la-di-dee.
Back in the early to mid 2000s, my brother Jack Boyle, who is a frequenter in the music scene with me, and a good friend of mine, he had a hard drive. He had a hard drive that you plugged into the wall and then plugged into a USB port on your laptop. I have one like that now. It's not an uncommon thing, but for the time that it existed, it held a very small amount. Sorry, not for the time it existed. For what hard drives can hold now compared to what they could hold then, it was like a lot of work for a little payoff kind of thing. And it wasn't at all impractical. It was totally cool. It was just sitting on his desk, plugged into his laptop. Storage, of course. But we just loved to, like, me and my friend Peppy, for whatever reason, and maybe my youngest brother Steve, would just dig on that hard drive. We would just be like, hey, Jack, I don't know if you're bringing your computer and your hard drive, but I don't have an extra garage at my house for you to park it in. And then we would say other things like, we'd be like, hey, Jack, I don't know if you know, but there's a landing pad, a helicopter landing pad up on the top of the skyscraper in the next city if you want to bring your hard drive. And we'd be like, I don't know, Jack, I don't have a box truck. I don't know if we should bring your hard drive or what. And then we'd be like, hey, Jack's hard drive has its own orbit, and it would kind of turn into like, that was funny. You had to be there, okay? God.
She's my Cherry Garcia. Taped over CSI Miami made me cry. I killed her dad. She's my Cherry Garcia. She took my Cherry Garcia. She taped over CSI Miami made a grown man cry. Sweet Cherry Garcia. I killed her dad in the garage. She's not coming back. She can't take my ice cream. I took her ice cream and it's all for myself. So now I know that she's not gonna eat it.